Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome back to the Connected Wellness Podcast. I am Rachel and I'm here with the lovely Marianne, and we are so passionate about wellness.
Here in this podcast, we look at the ways our physical, emotional, and spiritual health is all connected and how we can take better care of our whole selves holistically so we can live our best lives. We're really excited that you're here with us on the journey. Welcome to episode 27. Is
Yes,
that
we're at
right? Yes.
27.
Okay.
Yes.
Nice. And I think we're just about like 1 year in. So
Yes.
cheers to 1 year. Happy
Yes.
anniversary.
Happy
Happy
anniversary.
birthday, Connected
Happy
Wellness Podcast.
birthday. Oh, it's great. It's
So,
been great.
yeah, it's a good like timing. We're doing this 1 year in, and today we're going to talk about like reflecting on the past year. We could say on 2023 or on, year one of Connected Wellness Podcast. We're going to
Yeah.
do some reflection and look forward. So I think that'll be nice
Hmm.
during this time. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
I'm excited.
always we reflect on the wins first, right?
Yes, wellness wins. Marianne, would you like to go for it?
Okay, sure. So my win this time is basically about giving myself grace and just
Mm.
like giving myself a break. So we had a family member come to stay with us for about 5 days, like about a week ago, and it was for maybe the busiest weekend of the year. We had a lot of like activities going on, a lot of like obligations, mostly good stuff, but like just a lot going on. And then to top it off, the day that the person arrived, I had this medical test that left me feeling horrible and yucky. And
Mm.
so it was just like, a lot at one time. Normally, I really take it seriously being a hostess and I like want to make sure that I'm cooking like at least, one or two meals during the time someone is here. Like I don't have to cook every meal, like it's fine, but I feel
Yeah.
like I need to like be a good hostess. I'm sure this is something I learned from my mother. And so I was planning to make dinner that first night that she was here, but like I just felt awful. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to like force myself to do this. Like, it's not going to be good for
Yeah.
anyone. Like, when I want to be able to enjoy their company, like what does it matter what we're eating? I just like put together a whole bunch of like appetizers instead of like cooking a meal. It was delicious. We had a good time. Nobody seemed, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you didn't cook me a 5 course meal. Nobody was offended or
Mm.
anything. I made a dinner reservation for the following night. I was like, no, I just know like my limits, and this is not a time that I can
Yeah.
be cooking. There's just too much going on. And so I felt like that was a win, because I normally would have felt like really bad about not doing that. But I was just like, nope, I need to be realistic. I need to be reasonable. Like I am limited right now in my
Yeah.
capacity to do certain things. And yeah, and I think that's like good evidence for me to collect for the future. Like it's okay if I can't do everything exactly how I was wanting to do it.
Absolutely. That is a really big deal because I know we spoke about in previous episodes like people pleasing is a goal for both of us to overcome.
Hmm.
And I think this is a really great opportunity where you were like, no, I'm not going to fall into trying to like go above and beyond for something
Hmm.
that I'm not even asking for. Instead,
Yeah.
I'm just going to be super hospitable in a different way and everyone is still really happy and honoring
Yeah.
your energy. So, that's a huge win, Marianne.
And sometimes an all snacks dinner is kind of a good dinner. Like, yeah, it was. I mean, we all
It sounds
enjoyed it.
good.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think anyone was mad, but yeah. So,
Yeah. Oh,
how
that's
about how
awesome.
about you, Rachel?
That's funny because I was like, an all snacks dinner does sound very yummy. But maybe that's just me, and I'm like maybe secretly a child. But for me, my wellness win was this past weekend. We had some friends, my husband and I had some friends that were visiting from out of town, and it was really like great to see them. They weren't staying with us, but we were able to see them like multiple times while they were here, and it was just like good quality time.
Mm.
It just made me think about like when they were living here and how we would spend time with each other, and I don't know. There's something about, especially like as adults, having friendships that are really like deep and meaningful and like healthy with like psychological safety.
Mm-hmm.
And they're also Christians as well. So we could like vibe on like the spiritual stuff too, which was really nice. It was just like a very warm and fuzzy time, just a lot of
Yeah.
deep connecting with each other. And I'm an introvert. And so I typically get really tired after
Mm-hmm.
socializing, and I was still tired, but I was like fulfilled and tired. And I was like, wow, is this what people like typically feel like? Because I'm not used to this. I'm used to feeling exhausted and depleted after social interactions. So it was really nice. It was really, really
Oh,
nice.
that is nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yay, wellness wins. Good job,
Yeah,
team.
and yay, long-term friendships. Yeah, that's hard to maintain as adults, so that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Alrighty. Shall we go into more reflecting? I feel like we started reflecting already with our
I
wellness wins.
know,
But
I
shall we
know.
go into more?
Absolutely. So 2023 has been an interesting year. I don't know
Yeah,
for
girl.
me. I don't know. I think maybe for all of us, in some way, shape, or form, it's been an interesting year. But what I
Yeah.
think we were wanting to do is, if anyone has been with us since the beginning, episode one, we had set some self care goals for the
Yep.
coming year, which was 2023. And we thought it would be fun and interesting to kind of loop back and be like, how did we do, on those goals? Because we don't believe in resolutions, right? That's a little bit too like
Mm-hmm.
aggressive and, intimidating. So we just had set some nice goals to take care of ourselves in specific ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how did you do?
Okay, I'm pulling up the list right now. How did I do? So I did well. There was definitely some places where I was like, "Oh, wow, Rachel, you totally did not even like do that much in this goal." There are other ones where I was like, "Oh, I like accomplished this. This is something that I did pretty regularly." So it's mixed. It's mixed. It's mixed. How about for you?
It's definitely mixed too. Yeah. So I remember, again, we had just started the podcast and we were, talking about there's physical health, there's emotional health, there's spiritual health, right? Or wellness. And I had picked one goal in each category to take care of myself. And I'd say like two out of the three, I've made significant progress. But one
Yes.
of them, yeah, which of course this is like against everything that we talk about. So my spiritual health goal is the one that I was like, literally I read it, when I went back and looked at like episode one notes, and I was like, oh, fail. Like, and I hate to like say that, because it's not really
Yeah.
fail. It's just that I think it's really important that I recognize, okay, this is important to
Yeah.
me. Is it still important to me? Yes. So perhaps I
Mm,
need to adjust or do something different moving forward. And the good thing is that Jesus is so nice and he loves me so much that
yeah.
it's okay. He's not mad that I haven't spent as much time with him as possible. I know that he would like
Yeah.
me to, but he will extend ultimate grace and always be waiting for me. So that's
Yeah.
the goal that I'm definitely going to continue into 2024, like a more consistent, quiet time practice and just finding ways to like make it work with my schedule.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a great reminder of like, okay, like, is this a goal important to me? The answer is yes. So then I can just make changes that I need to make, and remembering the grace and love of God. God knows our
Mhm.
schedules. He knows our brains. He knows that we try. He knows that we forget. He knows all of that. He's sad, but he like loves us, and he's like, I get it. I get it. I'm here with you to make it work. So
Mhm.
rock on. Good job being honest with yourself, Marianne.
Yeah.
Sometimes we fail. Sometimes we fail,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
But like fail is not even the right word. It was just like, I didn't necessarily do what I wanted to do, but I learned, if I think about it, I learned what doesn't work for
Mm.
me. Right? Like maybe I
Mm-hmm.
had something specific in my head and that didn't work out for me this year. So again, I just need to tweak it. I need some prayer and reflection, to understand what is the way that I can best connect with him. Um,
Yeah.
in a more meaningful way. But let's
Mm.
win. I'm going to win again, or I'm going to celebrate another win. So my other two
Yes.
goals, my like emotional health or wellness goal was to learn to say no more often. And I mean,
Yeah.
I can't count the number of times that I said no this year. Again, am I like flawless at it? No, but like compared to previous years, I honestly it's a huge difference. And so that's
Yeah.
like I think what I'm the most proud of. So I can call that a win.
Yes.
And then my physical health goal was to like include more restorative movement, so perhaps some more yoga. And I did do regular yoga for a little bit. I remember telling you why I stopped the regular classes. I don't know if you remember, but there was like some other
Yes.
barrier to that. But in addition to taking classes, like I've been making a point to stretch at home. You know, like even
Hmm.
I told myself if it's just one stretch a day, like it's better than zero stretches. So like I'll
Mm.
just make a point to do something, you know, before bed, and that's been really nice. So I feel like two
Mm.
out of three making significant progress. I'm
Yes.
pleased with that.
Yeah, girl, that is
Yeah.
huge. I like we need to take a moment and recognize how important it is that were able to say no more. Marianne, as somebody that knows you personally, like that is so huge. And I remember you being like, okay, I said no, like I did
Yeah.
it, and
Like the
everything
first
was
time I
fine.
did it. Yeah, that was like my
Yeah.
wellness win of the episode. And I was like scared that people were going to be
Yeah.
mad, but like I don't feel that anymore, you know. I think
Yeah. So
so.
that's a very big deal. Like huge, huge, huge. And also the consistent movement and all of that I think is really important too. So this is a very big moment. Good job, Marianne.
Yeah, thank you. So that was actually fun to look back on. So I'm glad we decided to chat about this. But yeah, I mean, so
Good.
what else? What other ways can we reflect on this year? What do you think besides looking at
Yeah.
goals?
Yeah, let me see. I'm taking a look at the goals that I had, and I think reflecting on them is helpful, but then also reflecting on like memories. So like there's usually like big things or even small things that like stand out of like, oh wow, like I really remember times where I was really excited and really happy. I really remember times where I was feeling really down, and what did I do during those times? How did I receive support and care during those times? So like memories and like moments and events are really helpful. I know for me there was a moment earlier this year, mid this year, where I discovered that I have a new favorite color, and that was like such a big deal for me. Like I still love the color yellow. I think I am allowed to have two favorite colors because that's like where I am right now in my life. And so I still have my favorite color of yellow, but I really realized how much I love hunter green, and I was like, I think I
Nice.
have another favorite color. So that was like a really big moment. There was no like event, you know what I mean? It was just like
Hmm.
a revelation moment of like, hey, and that was something that I've been reflecting on. Um I'm trying to think. So my goals, similar to you, were like a mixed bag of like, did
Hmm.
I do it, did I not do it? So one of them was having the courage to unlearn what is unhealthy and create real goals that are like healthy for me. That one, I feel like I have more work to do in that area, but I definitely made like some really good dents into that.
Yeah.
And just like taking moments to be like, why am I doing this the way that I'm doing this? How did I
Hmm.
learn it this way? Are there other ways I could be doing it? And I think what has been very helpful in that area is the habits that I have that I don't necessarily like, or things that I just notice about myself that I would like to change. I was able to realize like where I learned this from, and I was like, oh, okay, like things that I do that I learned from this place or this person or this context or whatever it is, like that was not like the healthiest. And
Hmm.
so anytime that I'm like doing something that I learned from that place, let me actually sit and analyze it to see what I want to do with it. And so I think that was really helpful. It really opened the door of the different areas of my life where I was gullible, or maybe where I just trusted somebody too much, stuff like that. So that was really eye-opening to me. And so I think I made pretty good progress in that one. Another one was to practice mindfulness, self-differentiation, and psychological congruence. So wow, those are rare clinical terms, Rachel. Just like Rachel, be like a person, not a clinician right now. Um
You are who you
I d-
are, and we love you for it. It's fine.
True.
I
Thank
mean,
you.
maybe we need some
Thank you.
explanation, but it's
Right.
okay. Yeah, to say the words that you're comfortable with, it's okay. Yeah.
Thanks, Marianne. So mindfulness, that's just you being in the moment, and being present fully. I've been doing a better job of that, but I there's still more progress I'd like to make in that area. And I'm able to identify, like, what are the things that prevent me from being mindful, what are the things that make it difficult for me to practice mindfulness. Am I feeling stressed? Am I rushing? Right, typically those things make that difficult. Self differentiation is basically this idea that I can stay true to my values, my characteristics, who I am, even if I'm in a space with people who have different opinions than me. And I'm not trying to persuade them of my opinion. And I'm also not tempted to change my opinion to be the same as theirs, right? That's self differentiation. I've gotten better at that, but I also just realize my social circles are like very, very similar to me. So it's like, okay, I'm getting better at it, like in spaces that are more public or I don't know as many people. But it made me think about my friendships and my social circles. And I'm like, how do I like expand my social circles a little bit more? So that's been really fun. And then the psychological congruence is basically this concept where there's congruence like in how you're thinking and how you're feeling and how you're behaving. And what's happening internally is expressed accurately externally. This is the one where I I did not fail, but it had the slowest amount of progress, I'll say. Um, yeah, I think a big part of it was just doing a lot of work this year with my mental health and understanding like why things kind of felt jumbled, or why I was able to understand things cognitively, but emotionally it wasn't like really sinking in. There was like a blockage in the highway, right? How do I deal with that? A big thing that I did though is I hired a fashion consultant. And that was really helpful because I realized I was really frustrated that my internal world, my like personality, my funness was not coming out in my clothing and in my appearance. And I was like, I don't really know what to do. Like, I'm an average New Yorker. New Yorkers typically wear all black all the time. It's just like what we do. There's articles about this. I don't even know whether you feel depressed or not. Like, we just always wear all black. And I like don't wear prints a lot, and I get really nervous with different cuts and all of that. And I don't know where to start. So I hired somebody, and she's been so helpful in giving me the words for like the styles that I like. What should I be Googling? What are shopping companies and stores that I should go for that are good for people of my size and my figure and stuff like that. So that's been helpful, but I think there's still more to do in that. So yeah, I feel like, and then the last one was spiritual. We can go into that one in a second because I've been babbling a lot, but that's kind of like what comes to mind when I like take stock of what this year has been like in regards to the self-care goals.
Yeah. Well, I want to say a couple things. You said you started with the unlearning goal and you were like, well, I'm not done. Well, Rachel Ann, I don't think that's going to be done in a year. Like, I feel like that goal is like a lifetime goal, it's like a continuous. Girl. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Great. If you've made any progress on that front, that's amazing, so good for you. Yeah. And then what else was I thinking about? The fashion consultant sounds super fun. So I'm just going to throw that out there. Like, I probably knew that was a thing, but didn't ever really think that was a thing. But yeah, so take note, family, if you need a future gift for me, if there's like a gift certificate or something for that sounds, that sounds super cool and interesting. But also you mentioned reflecting on like events and memories. And yeah, that is huge for me, and for us, Chris and I, as a couple at the end of the year. And there's two like huge things that we do that I'll just share with you guys if anyone, is interested in ways to do this. One is every year around this time, I get made a daily photo calendar. There's only one company that I've ever found that makes it. It's called Social Print Studio. Happy to link it below. They're like a smallish business, which I love supporting. But it's so cool. You just like send them all your photos or upload them on their their page. So I just like put all these photos from the past year, like from 2023. And then literally they send you like a little, it's like this big, you know, and it's like nice cardstock. So you have like a whole bunch of photos at the end of the year, but every single day we get to tear off and see a memory from last year. You know, so that will be every
Yeah.
day in 2024, which is so nice. Like it really does, like just that tiny
Yeah.
moment of looking at the next picture every morning, like makes me happy. You know, so that's one thing.
Yes.
That's one way we do it, like throughout the entire year. And then
Mm.
the other thing is, have you guys have probably heard of this before. Some people call it a happy jar. There's many names for it, but like
Mm.
throughout the year, writing on slips of paper something good that happened, a good memory, a good day, you know, a good whatever, and you just like keep it in a jar throughout the year. So we do this as well. And then on New Year's Day, that's one of our favorite traditions is like, you know, sitting for a long time with our coffee in the morning, dumping the jar on the floor, and like taking turns reading all of those like fun memories from the past year. So
I
I'm
love
with you
that.
on reflection, like especially on the good. You know, it's good to reflect on what can I do better. And I think we'll
Hmm.
talk a little bit about that maybe soon. But to reflect on the positive, on the good parts of the year is really powerful.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is a reminder for me to take more pictures because I love that calendar idea, but I am so in the moment that I just don't take pictures, or I'm just like, I don't want to get my camera or my phone, whatever, whatever. But this is such a good reminder to do that.
Hmm.
And I love a friend of mine does it. She calls it the joy jar. And like when I left my last job, she made Rachel's joy jar,
Oh,
and
cute.
like everybody wrote like really nice messages. To this day I still haven't opened it because I know I'm gonna bawl my eyes out, and I'm like, I can't handle it. But it's such a sweet idea. Oh, I love those, Marianne.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then the
that's so
jar is super
awesome.
easy. Like it doesn't require, you just literally need some container. Doesn't have to be a
Yeah.
jar, just any container, slips of paper, you know. If you can make it a habit too, like at the end of the week, that's like a good way to have like mini reflection sessions throughout the year, you know, that you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm gonna try to write down a couple things at the end of every week to stick in the jar. And then you have like
Yeah.
a whole bunch of happy things to look at the next
Mm-hmm.
year. But yeah, highly
I
recommend.
love that. I love that. Such good ideas. Thank you for
Thanks.
sharing that, Marianne.
Of course.
Um, the I just realized I didn't do the last one. The last goal, which was I think the
Hmm.
spiritual wellness one, was I typically fast in the month of January for the whole month to kind of just like hear from God. I forgot if we talked about this in the episode one, but the one of the reasons why I don't like New Year's resolutions is because people typically make New Year's resolutions around times when they're really stressed. So
Mm.
holidays are great, but sometimes they're really stressful for people. And also, there's usually just a lot of things that are going on, and we tend to be around a lot of people who we aren't typically around, and so we're getting influenced by a lot of people that we wouldn't necessarily be influenced
Mm.
by.
Hmm.
And that impacts how we create our goals because we typically create goals in the months of like November and December. And so I do my own thing where I usually, like in a lot of Christian communities that I know of, they do a Daniel fast in the month of January as a way to start the year. So I do something like along those lines for the month of January. And then this year, so sorry, usually when I do fast, usually there's like a Bible verse that God wants me to be focusing on for the year. And usually there's like a motto or a phrase or something. And so this year, the verse was, I remember it's one that you really, really liked, the second Timothy 1
Mm.
7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind.
Hmm.
So that's what he gave me for this year. And I definitely see why he gave me that. And the motto for me this year, like the word for this year, was reclaiming power. And so realizing just areas of my life where I felt really helpless or powerless, not trying to take power from the Lord. I don't mean it like a prideful
Mm.
way, but more so like I have agency to be able to decide things for myself. I can speak up, I can advocate, I can do things differently, like we spoke about last
Hmm.
time. I can do things differently than I've not done it my whole life, and that's fine. So I've done a good job in that area. I think it really just like started, I think it just started something new in me that I want to continue for next year. So yeah, progress has been made. More progress is to come. And I typically find that for like my January fasting and motto and the Bible verse experience, I find that it they tend to like build on each other, and it's like, okay, this year this is what it is, and that's going to prep me for what's to come for next year, and then that, you know, preps me for the year after that. So I see it more as like a continuation. So it's hard to be like, oh, I did this really well, or, oh, this was progress. It's more of like, oh yeah, like this is an alignment. I see the theme. I see how everything is linked that God is doing in my life. So yeah, I really liked that. I really liked that phrase, and I really liked that that verse. It was definitely some good reminders. It was the background on my phone for most of the year. Yeah, it just really reminded me of like what happens when we believe that the Holy Spirit is working in us, and that we can have a power of a sound mind, and we don't need to have fear, since we know that God is with us and God is for us and is guiding us. So that is my full reflection.
I have a question for you. Well, I have a couple questions actually. How did you come up with the verse, or how did it like come to you, or how did you find it?
Yeah, great question. So usually what I do is specifically during this January time, I typically am fasting and I'm praying, and I'm specifically fasting and praying like, Lord, what is it that you want from me this year? What do you want me to know? Yeah, like what are the plans that you have? So like sometimes some like practical, tangible things, especially as a business owner, I'm like, God, what's the strategy for this year? What are the things you want me to create for your people? Stuff like that. But it's mostly when it's personal, it's just like, God, what's the vibe this year? What's the motto? And so I don't know, I just find that when I ask the Lord that, he usually confirms that in other people. So for me, that looks like usually if I hear from 2 or 3 people who don't know each other and they're saying very similar things within like a short time span, I'm like, okay, God is definitely trying to say something, because there's no way that these 2 to 3 random people are going to like all know to say the same thing to me. So it was partly that. And then the Bible verse part, it's my devotional life is very interesting. But basically I start by praying, and then usually I feel led to like do something. So sometimes I feel led to just like journal everything that I'm thinking about. Sometimes I feel led to go to a specific book or story in the Bible. Sometimes I feel led to worship. Sometimes I feel led to intercessory prayer on behalf of other people, or even cry intercessory prayerful tears on behalf of other people. So I just kind of like follow where the Holy Spirit is leading me. And so, but usually what I find in January is when I'm like getting an idea, I'm like, okay, I'm getting a confirmation that like, okay, this is a year of really just reclaiming the power that the Lord has given me, really being mindful about who I'm engaging with and in what ways I'm engaging with them, being mindful of the music and the sounds and the words that I'm digesting. And thinking of ways that power has been taken from me in the past, grieving that, forgiving myself and those persons or those situations for that, and then being like, well, what does that look like for me now? And then through that, I forgot exactly what happened, but what usually happens is like, once God gives me like, he's like circling the area of like what he wants me to be focusing on, what's the word, usually I'm like, oh, okay, it reminds me of this verse. Or I'm like, oh, like let me Google like verses about courage or discipline or whatever it is, and then I'll look through, and then there's like this like, I call it like a Holy Spirit disruption, but it's basically like this conviction inside of me, like literally something happens in my body that's like, yes, this is the verse. Yes, this is the word for you, this model. There's just a stirring that I feel internally, and I'm like, oh, okay. This is what God wants me to be focusing on this year. And then praying about that, I'm like, okay, God, what does this verse mean to me? What do the words reclaiming power mean to me? Right? Especially as a person of color, the idea of power is very like, so what does that mean as a Christian woman of color? hopefully that makes sense. I think this is the first time I've actually like verbalized this
Yeah.
process, but that's typically what happens.
Well, thank you for being willing to share that with us. I
Yeah.
think that process will look different for everybody too. Like
Yeah.
God, speaks to us. He reveals to us things in infinite number of ways. Because everybody
Yeah.
will receive differently from Him, and I think that's why it's so important to be open to what He wants to tell us. And it could
Yeah.
be from a friend, it could be from your own personal Bible reading, it could be from a sermon that you're hearing. So that's why I think we should always be open and like listening. And and if we
Yeah.
have part of our prayer every day, Lord, what do you want to tell me, or what do you want to show me, then we're kind of always on the lookout for what He wants to say. But I think
Yeah.
someone may, or people may have this question, well, how do we know it's from God and like
Mm.
not from, perhaps a more sinister source, or even just
Mhm.
from ourselves? Like we could
Mhm.
come up with something and be like, oh yeah, that's from God, to confirm that I can do what I want to do. But that's a probably a very serious topic that maybe we need an expert for. But I will just say, like, we have to compare it to His word. Like as Christians, His
Yeah.
word is like maybe the only absolute that we have. And so we got to compare it. But also, hopefully you have someone that you can trust, a spiritual advisor, guide, that you can run things by. Be like, I think I feel God telling me
Mm.
this or leading me this way, and you can like share that with them. But that might be a
Yeah.
question for one of our spiritual leaders. If we could get a guest on here, I think that might be a good question. How do we know we're hearing from God?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is such a good question. I literally was talking about this with a client the other day. They literally asked me, I'm not going to, obviously, it's client confidentiality, but basically, the situation was like, how do I, she was like, Rachel, this sounds great. I told them to like be praying about something specifically. And she's like, that sounds great. How do I know though that what I'm hearing
Mm-hmm.
from or what I'm seeing or observing is actually confirmation from God
Mm-hmm.
or it's not something else? And I was like, girl, that is such a good question.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, I feel like wise counsel, the Bible talks about wise counsel and how that's really important for us to have in our lives. So that's like a spiritual advisor. It could be a pastor, a priest, something like that. It also could be people who are older, who are in the faith, who
Mm-hmm.
are wise, and people who speak from a place of wisdom, not from a place of bias or a place of persuasion, but people who speak from a place of wisdom, and they actually ask you a lot of questions, and they're very intrigued in that. What I found also has been helpful for me is that there are like it's building a relationship with God. So like kind of how my husband and I built a relationship. He was a stranger to me years ago, and then all of a sudden I met him and I got to know him more. So I got to understand like what he meant when he said certain things. I would ask for clarity so I could understand him more.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times where I thought I understood him, but I didn't. And so he clarified again with patience. He made it known, right, what it was that he was talking about, and vice versa, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same for my husband understanding and learning me. I think it's the same thing with God. Like as I was starting a relationship with God for like myself as an adult, I was like, okay, like how do I know that this is God? And so I would just like start having experiences and be like, I think this is God. So I'd move forward in that direction, being like, I think God is telling me to do XYZ. And then based on how I felt, based on how the situation turned out, based on the convictions that I was feeling, I was like, oh, actually, that wasn't God. Sorry. I thought it was. My bad. Right. And he always, like, God is such a gentle but loud GPS. He will always renavigate us.
Mm-hmm.
Always, always, always till we are blue in the face. He will do that. And I learned that the more I spend time with him, the more I understand his voice, and the more that I understand, oh yeah, this is a feeling that I get when God is telling me to do something, so I know to go with it. But it's a skill. It's a skill. It's a muscle that like you're building
Mm.
and you're learning.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the differences between like practicing a religion and doing rituals. Like if we're forgetting the reason why and if we're not connecting with God versus having a relationship with God and being like, wow, God, I want to hear you. I'm working on this relationship with you. I'm growing in maturity of how I hear you and feel you and serve your people. So it's definitely complicated. And God knows that we're all different people. So there's different ways that he speaks to us.
Mm-hmm.
How he speaks to me, and the spiritual gifts that he has given me is going to be different than you and everybody else.
Yeah.
And I think that's on purpose because he wants so many different people to love him and know him and for him to be glorified. So
Yeah.
he's got a whole bunch of skills. He's like, all right, we're going to use it all, everybody. You get this skill, you get this skill. Now go out and do that skill and make disciples and glorify the Lord and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. The uniqueness is so important. And that's why we can share our experiences with one another. But again, you might not connect with the way that I connect with God. You know, like he connects with us all in a way that we most feel comfortable and feel his presence. So, yeah. It takes a lot of experimentation.
Yeah, sometimes I am uncomfortable though.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not comfortable, but just the way that clicks. You know what I mean? The most for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, clicks. Because I'm like, girl, God be telling me to do stuff. And I was like, this is not comfortable. I do not want to do conflict resolution. I don't. I want to punch them.
Yeah.
And I can't. Yeah. So thanks.
You know, you're right. One of my favorite quotes from C.S. Lewis, well, everything C.S. Lewis said is my favorite, to be honest. He's just amazing. But he says, like, I did not turn to Christianity for comfort. I always knew that a glass of port could do that. So yeah, like that's not why you become Christian. You know, it's definitely not comfortable, you know, but yeah, that's another story too. Okay. So here's what I want to talk about, for the time that we have left. Like, so we did some reflection, you know, what was the last year, and then, kind of like how to think about the next year, especially spiritually. I always like, again, tangible, like what can I do? What can I write down? You know, what can I like proclaim that I'm actually going to change? So I heard this idea that I really liked. Again, it's not resolutions at all. Someone called it 24 and 24. I think there was also 23 and 23. I don't know how long this has been going on, but 24 and 24. So meaning like you make 24 very like doable mini goals, right? Or this list of 24 things you want to focus on for the year. And we actually talked about this when we talked about habits. Like these are very small things, not like big things. So remember your be mindful goal. So that is a amazing goal and great and totally worthwhile. But if I just like make this goal to be mindful, it's so diffuse and like it's so intimidating for me because it's like, well, where do I start? Right. So maybe one of my 24 things might be take 5 minutes of reflection at the end of the day. And that will help me in my desire to be mindful, right? Or set an alarm, you know, every 2 hours to just pause for 30 seconds, right? That is one thing that's, again, small and doable that could help me in this bigger goal. Like another example, a lot of people might have a goal to be more active, right? Again, if you just say be more active, okay, well, like, where do I start? So one of my 24 items might be take a 10-minute walk at lunchtime, right? That's doable a lot of days for a lot of people. It, again, depends on your schedule, but so I really like that idea because I like things that I can focus on, like that I can see, you know, when I write them down. And I like things that are actionable, that will actually have an effect, you know. So, and it could look different for everyone. Like you can even have a theme. So if I had to think of a theme goal for me for 24, was probably my same one for 23, is like to be more balanced, achieve a more balanced life between rest and activity, and productivity and rest. We need to talk about my addiction to productivity in a future episode, for sure, because I'm probably not the only one with that problem. But so if I chose that theme of balance, I could think of, you know, some little items that would help me achieve that. So again, make sure I schedule in one Saturday with no plans every month, right? Like that's something that I could do. So yeah, I really liked that. I don't know how you feel about it or if you heard about this 24 and 24 idea.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that. I think that's really cool. One, I love cheesy things like alliteration and things that like match up because I'm just, I'm like, I feel like we're similar in that area. So naturally I'm like, ooh, yes. I get caught up with like things that are like too specific because I'm like, okay, if you can't come up with 24 things. So I think it's also helpful to mention like, yeah, it's like do your best. If you can't come up with 24 things, you can't come up with 24 things, right? We want to take away the pressure because the goal is to do it and to complete these things. And if you're feeling pressured and stressed, you're not going to do it. Um, so I do like it. I think that it's a great idea. It reminds me of for people who follow me on Instagram, I usually do something called like today's agenda. And I basically just list out things that I'm going to do throughout the day. And some of them are really big things like create a new program. Other ones are really tiny, like unclench my jaw 5 times. So it reminds me of that. I think there's so much power in the tiny or the more micro things that we forget those things actually build to something bigger. It builds a lifestyle, it builds like a habit. And so it makes me think about that, right? Like, yes, like having this big grand theme goal is really important. But if we think about the small thing that can connect that big thing to make that big thing happen. So if I want to practice mindfulness, then that means that I should probably meditate 3 minutes a day. That will help me with my goal of mindfulness, stuff like that. So I love stuff like that. That's really cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course, and I think that like it's the small stuff that makes up our life, like it really is.
Yep.
Like it's the daily activities, it's our daily routines, our habits that we do on a regular basis, which by itself might seem small, but when you add it all together, like, I don't know if that sounds bad, but like that's your life. The small things that I do all day, if I add that all together, that is my life. So
Yeah.
so if I want to change my life in any way, even a small, way towards the positive, I need to look at those little things. And I do think we talked about that. Episode 2 was all about habits, and I remember definitely discussing that. But yeah, so I'll share a few of the things. Like I haven't made my whole list, but I was like thinking about it. Every time something pops in my head, I just like make a note in my phone. So some of them are bigger, like I really need to clean my home office. That's one of them. I'm going to put that on my list. But then I want to maintain this at least one stretch per day, right? So that's like going to be another item on my list. I got a head start on that, so that's great. Another one, I'm sticking with the 24 theme, is I would like to plan 24 nights where I do something creative at home. So like I haven't been knitting for a while. I started this paint by number that I'd like to continue. I do like some fun art journaling sometimes. So, but I know myself and I need to like set aside that time. So I thought to myself, okay, 24 nights, that's 2 times a month. Like that feels really doable. If I can like set aside, okay, 2 evenings a month, this is what we're going to do. So yeah, that was one of them. And then the last one that I'll share with you is, remember we talked about the 20-minute timer for decluttering or cleaning? So I tried it once. It was like amazing. The space that I decluttered in the 20 minutes still looks great like a month later. It's still like nice and clean. So 100% I'm going to do that, maybe 24 times if I can. But yeah, we can make it a 24-minute timer. We're just going to like move room by room. But Chris is totally on board for this because that one 20-minute session was like super useful. So yeah, that's on my list.
Oh my gosh. I love that. I'll be thinking about that. I'll see what comes up for my list. I love that. And I don't know, this makes me think about y'all, right? Y'all who are tuning in. We'd love to hear from you about, do you like this 24 and 24 idea? What are the things that you want to be thinking about? Do you have resolutions? Have you been reflecting this year? I need to stop hitting this table. I'm sorry. My camera has been shaky because I keep hitting the table with my elbow. But we want to hear from you about how annoying it is that I keep shaking the camera, and just anything that you've been thinking about in terms of like reflecting and wondering about what this year has been like for you, and what do you want to keep and move to next year, and what do you want to leave in this year, right? Because we can leave stuff in 2023 and we can move as much as we want from 2023 to 2024, y'all. You have agency to decide. So we would love to hear from you about all of those things. you can let us know on Instagram. You can find us there. You can DM us. We're there at Connected Wellness Podcast. You can also email us if you want to email us all of the things that you're thinking about. That is connectedwellnesspodcast@gmail.com. If you want to reach out to me specifically, you can reach out to me on Instagram at Real with Rachel Ann. If you want to reach out to Marianne specifically, you can reach out to her at Wabasaba on Instagram. We're also on Facebook at Connected Wellness Podcast on Facebook. And then we'll make sure to include the link for the picture calendar that Marianne mentioned. And well, by the time this has come out, Christmas will have passed. We hope you had a good Christmas. And we're excited to see you again for another fun year of Connected Wellness.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much for tuning in, and hope to see you in 2024. Happy New Year. And thank you. Be well until next time.
Yes, y'all. Happy New Year. Bye.